Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com, and we are here today on Arduino lesson number 12. And what we're going to focus on today is we're going to look and see how to easily and simply read data off of the serial port on the Arduino. And this is something that we really went over a little bit in lesson number 6, but it's such an important topic and something that we're going to really need to be able to do for the remainder of the lessons. It's something that you really need to do for all types of different projects. And also the reason I want to go over it is that most of the tutorials that I see on the web make this unduly complicated. There's a lot of very tedious ways of doing it. There's a lot of very difficult ways of doing it. But what I want to do is I want to show you the easy way. Okay, I just want to show you the easy way that will simply work. And you're welcome to go in and learn the more complicated or the more in-depth ways, but I just want something that will work. Okay, for almost every project that you're going to do, you can do the project by utilizing basically 3 different data types. There's a lot more data types than the 3, but almost anything that I want to do on the Arduino I can do if I use one or all of these 3 data types. Okay, there are other data types out there, but I want to kind of have the minimum set that will meet almost all of the requirements that I'm going to run into. The 3 data types that will get you through almost all of your projects are int for integer, float for floating point number, and remember in the world of programming we call them floating point numbers. In math class you would call them real numbers. It's all those in-between numbers that are between the integers. And the third thing you need is a string, and basically a string is a string of text. And so if you can have a variable that's a string for a string of text, an int for your round integer numbers, and a float for the in-between numbers, you can do almost everything. Now it's true that if you get more sophisticated, you maybe could do things a little more efficiently, or you could do things more elegantly. But if you learn those 3 data types and how to get them across the serial port, you'll be able to do just about everything. Okay. So if you're going to have a project, one of the first things that you got to do is you got to kind of identify all of those variables that you're going to need. You need to identify all the variables that you're going to be using, and not just kind of like the variable name. Remember, a variable is like a bucket, and the name of the variable is the label on the bucket. You need to kind of figure out the bucket and the label that you're going to put on the bucket, the name of the variable. And then you need to figure out whether that variable should be an int, a float, or a string. Okay. Now it's true that you could probably just make everything either a float or a string. All right, that you know, a float could probably do just about anything that an int could, but it is good to use ints when you can get by with them, integers, because they take so much less memory than a float. You can make your programs more efficient if you only use floats when you really need them, and use ints when you can get by with it. So for instance, if I'm going to declare a pin and I'm going to be using pin 9, there's no reason to make pin 9, you know, or a pin number to be a float, because your pins are always going to be round numbers. And so it's just natural to declare your variables that you're going to use associated with pins. It's just natural to declare those ints. Let's think of other things that might be ints. If you said, made a program to average grades, and you said, how many grades do you want to input? Well, the number of grades that you would have would always be round numbers. I have 5 grades, or I have 14 grades, so it would make sense to make that number. But now in inputting the grades themselves, you might have in-between grades. Maybe someone made a 97.5. So in that case, the variable holds the grade itself should probably be a float. So you see, you need to look through here and kind of decide on your project what your variable names are going to be and whether they should be ints, floats, or strings. Okay, if you think about a program where you're going to input a person's grades and average them, you might want the person's name as a starting point. Well, the person's name would logically be a string. And so you've got to kind of scope things out with what your variables are when you start a project. So what I want to do is go in and just sort of review how to read ints, floats, and strings over the serial port. And so let's just do a little project. Let's say that we're going to have a project where we're going to prompt the user for his name. We're going to read the name in, and then we're going to ask the person how old he is, and we're going to read in the age, and then we're going to ask the person how tall he is, and we're going to read that in. So let's see if we can just write a little program that will do that, okay? So let's start. What did we say that we always want to kind of start with? We want to start with our variables and declaring our variables. And so let's come up here and think of the variables that we are going to be needing for this project. Well, what was the first thing that we were going to prompt the person for their name? Well, what type of variable would that be? Well, the name would obviously be a string, and so we want to declare that a string, S-T-R-I-N-G. Remember, it starts with a with an uppercase S, and we're going to declare it a string. Now, as far as what the name of the variable is, that's just the label on the bucket, and so you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it my name. Okay. We're not initializing this to any specific value. We're just declaring it as a variable, so we don't have to put it equal to anything. Just telling Arduino, hey, this is a variable we're going to be using. So we're going to declare a string variable to hold name. All right. What were we going to ask for next? How old you are. So when you ask a person for their age, how do they usually answer? Well, they usually say, I'm 17, or I'm 15, or I'm 56. Those are usually answered in round numbers. And so what type of variable could we use? That's right, we would call it an int. So we're going to declare it an int, and that's going to be a lowercase. That's going to be a lowercase, and I think I'll just call it something simple, age. Okay, declare int variable to hold your age. Okay, float. I guess I shouldn't give it away yet. The third thing we were going to do was height in feet. Well, think about that. Would you want to say I'm 4 feet or I'm 5 feet? Well, most people are sort of in between, and so you probably would want to give that as a decimal number. So we would probably want to make that a float. So float for height, H-E-I-G-H-T. Okay. Declare float variable to hold your height. Okay, I think those are the variables we need, so we come down here to our void setup. Now in this case, we're not doing anything with a circuit. We're not sending anything out to the pins or reading anything to them, so we don't have to do our pin modes, but we do have to turn our serial port on. So we'll do a serial.begin 9600. That is what we are doing, is turning on serial port at 9600 baud. You can use whatever baud rate you want, but it needs to match how you have your serial port down in the lower, your serial monitor down in the lower right. Those two have to match. I think that's all we need to do on the serial port. I mean on the void setup. All right. So what do we want to do on the program? We want to prompt the user to begin with for his name. Well, to read his name over the serial port, to read anything over the serial port, there are three things you need to do. The first is you've got to prompt the user for the data. So you have to ask him for the data. So on the serial monitor, a little message comes up letting the user know that you're waiting for input. So we've got to prompt him. So we're going to say serial.println, print line. And then what is the prompt? Well, we're just going to type it in as a string. Because it's a string, it needs to go in quotes. And we're going to say, please enter your name. Okay. And then this is, and remember the comments come after the // The Arduino doesn't read those. It's just if a person looks at your code or you come back later, it'll make sense what you're doing. So we're going to prompt the user for his name. Okay. And then, so we prompt the user for input. Then what do? We got to wait. All right, because the computer can go a lot faster than a person can. So if you say please input something, you can't say please input something, read something. You got to say please input something and wait for him to put it in. So how did we do that? Remember, the way we do that is we create an empty while loop. It just hangs at that while loop waiting for data. When it sees that something's been put on the serial port, then it'll go read it. But we've got to put this kind of empty while loop in to just wait. So we say while serial dot available equal 0. What's that saying? While there's nothing at the serial port. That means while no one has entered anything. As long as no one's entered anything, hang up at this point. So basically that starts the while loop, the open curly bracket, that ends the while loop, close curly bracket, and what do we do in the while loop? Absolutely nothing. We just sit there and we go around and around and around in this while loop waiting for serial.available to not be 0. When the person enters the number and hits send or hits enter, then all of a sudden serial.available will be equal to 1 and it'll drop out of this loop. But until then, it's going to sit here and wait. So we prompt the user for input, okay? Then we read it in. We prompt the user for input, then we wait for it, and then as soon as it's there, we read it in. Now, the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to read the string, okay? So we've said that you can do almost everything with a string, a float, or an int. So the first thing we need to review here is how do you read a string over the serial port? Well, first of all, you have to put it inside of a variable. Which variable were we going to put the person's name in? We're going to put it in my name. And my name is going to be equal to what? Well, we're going to do a serial dot. We're going to read the name over the serial port. What's the command for reading the name? Well, it's serial dot read string. And you got to do it just like this. Serial, uppercase S, dot read string, uppercase S. Okay, and you see when you do it right, it turns orange. Open and close parentheses, and then close that off. All right? My name is equal to serial.read string. So what this is saying is tell the person to input their name. Wait for them to input it. And then when they input it, read it. How do we read a string? We read a string with serial.read string. And that'll bring the whole string in. The whole string comes into the variable my name. So this is the easy way to read a string over the Arduino serial port. Okay? And let's continue to be good boys and girls and put our comments in. So what are we doing here? We are waiting for user input. What are we doing here? Read the string. Read the string. Okay. So now we have done the first thing. We have asked them for their name and we've read it in. Okay. I don't want to type this whole thing in every time because the series is going to be the same. So ooh, I didn't mean to do that. Let me paste it back in. Okay, I meant to copy it. Save us a little typing here. And we'll just edit it next time around. So this time, we now want their age. And so what should we prompt them for? Okay, we should say, please enter your age. Or how about if I say, let me make it a little nicer. How old are you? Like that. And now we're prompting the user for his age. Okay. Now, what do? We've asked him for his age. What do? We wait. So while serial available is 0, while We're waiting for him to put it in there. We just circle along here. Then what do? We read it. What's the variable we're going to read? We're going to read the variable age. Okay. Now, how do we read an int over the serial monitor? We wouldn't read it with read string, and we wouldn't read it with read int. It's a different command. It's serial.parse int. Okay, see, it turns orange because it recognizes it. So now we have the person's name, and now we have the person's age. So what's the next thing we want? We want their height. So again, I'm going to paste those 3 lines to save a little work. We're going to prompt them for their weight, and so what we're going to say is how much do you weigh? So we are prompting the user for his weight. Then what do? We wait, and then when something has been entered, we drop out and we say weight, because that's, or I'm sorry, height. How much? I messed up. How tall are you? We were doing height, not weight. How tall are you? Prompt the user for his height. Wait for it and then read it into which variable? It's a variable that we called height. T-I-G-H-T. Okay. Now, we are not going to read string because height is not a string. We are not going to parse int because height is not an int. We are going to parse float because it is a floating point number. So basically, if you look at this code right here, these are the commands that you need to do just about anything, to get just about anything you're ever going to need to off of the serial monitor. If it is a string, you use the command serial.readString. If it is an int, you use the command serial.parseInt with a capital I, uppercase I. Okay, and then if it is a float, you use the command serial.parseFloat. Simple as that. Prompt them for the input, wait for it with the while loop, the empty while loop, and then go out and read it, and just keep track of whether you're going to use a read string, a parseInt, or a parseFloat command. Okay, let's practice our printing a little bit. So now let's come over here and let's sort of print these things out. So let's send the person a greeting back, and let's say serial.print, and let's say hello to them, H-E-L-L-O, and then I put a space. Now, why did I not put print ln, print line? Because I want to string together several of these print statements so it makes a nice sentence, and I don't want it to go to the next line because I want to say hello and then the person's name. In order to say hello and the person's name on the same line, I need to make sure that I don't advance to the next line, so I say serial.println, serial.print, okay, and I'm just going to put all my comment here for all the next thing, produce nicely formatted output. Okay, now I'll just call that comment good for the rest of the things. So now what is the person's name? I'm going to say serial.print. Okay, and what is their name? Their name is a string, and the variable name is my name. Okay, so my name. Now this is something very important, and this is something where students get messed up all the time. If you're just going to print out verbatim the word hello, it's not a variable, it's the string hello. And the string hello, you tell it that it's a string by putting it in the quotes. But if you're going to print a variable, my name is a string variable, you want to say print line, serial print, my name. You don't put quotes around it because it's a variable. If you put quotes around it, it would print out my name as opposed to the person's name. But because we want the value in the bucket, not the label on the bucket, we don't put quotes. So hello will print hello, serial.print my name will put whatever the content of that bucket is, whatever the person told you that the name was. No quotes in that case. Now you need to give him a message, okay? Serial.print. We're going to say, comma, you are. So we're going to tell him how old he is. Notice that I have to put that space after R, because if I don't put that space after R, it's going to come in and put their age crammed up against the E here. You have to put that space in. It doesn't know to put that space in. Now, serial.print. Now, what is their age? Their age is age. You are age. Again, age is a variable, so we don't put the quotes on it. We want them to tell us the number. We want to tell them the contents of that bucket. Age. You are age, and then serial.print. And then we want to put space so that it doesn't run up against the end of the age, space, serial print, years old, period. Okay, that's probably enough for one line, so let's get all of that. Let's put a print ln, and now it'll go to the next line, but all on the same line. It'll say like, hello Joe, you are 14 years old. That'll all be on one line. And then we're going to say serial.print, and you are, and since that's a specific string, and you are space the age, serial.print, and here we are going to put and you are height, so we're going to put height, the variable. Now serial.print space feet tall, period. Okay, and then we'll wrap it up, serial.println, so that this will finish off that line. And that did finish off. Let's see, we should finish off the line there with that ln. Okay, so it'll say, hello Joe, you are 15 years old, if he entered 15, and then on the next line, and you are 4.5 feet tall. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to print a blank line, just quote will print a blank character, and that'll print a blank line, so I get some vertical spacing in there that'll look nice. Okay, so just remember the things that you all want to go on one line, you just have serial print, and then when you want to finish that line and go to the next line, you put serial.print.ln. Also notice that I've been careful to put my white spaces in, and one of the things that really I count off on when I come around and grade your work, and other people, if you're taking this online, other people are not going to like it if you're not careful about formatting your output where it's easy to read, and that means make sure that you put your white spaces in. Like if you say I'm 33 years old, you don't want to say I am 33 and then the 3 and the Y without a space. You've got to put that space in there or your format's not going to look good. Your formatted output's not going to look good. And also sometimes just printing blank lines makes it easier to read as well. And so nice formatting is actually something that I grade on. I want to see something that's nice and easy to read. Now, I've done a lot of typing here. Is this program going to run? Is this program going to run? Let's see. Everything's green. Looks happy. Looks happy. All right, I think this is going to run. Okay, so let's get this up here. Please enter your name. I am Mr. McWhorter. Okay. Also, guys, make sure that you put no line ending here, because if you put new line or carriage return, that can confuse things, and so it's just good to put no line ending there. So I'm going to say, Mr. McWhorter, send. Okay, how old are you? I am 53. Okay, how tall are you? I'm going to say 5.9 feet. Ooh, let me gotta make sure I'm in the box there. 5.9 feet. I'm going to say send. Okay. It says, hello, Mr. McWhorter. You are 53 years old and you are 5.9 feet tall. It says, please enter your name. Okay, one thing I don't like is I would have liked to have had a space between here where it's asking me for stuff and when it's giving me the output. That would have made it more readable. So after the how tall are you, I really want to go in, I want to put another, just print a blank line in there, okay? So after I read that last thing, that last input, I'm just going to do a print a blank line here at serial.println. We get a blank line by just quote with nothing in it, and then close that off. I think that will look a little bit nicer. I kind of do the best I can the first time through, and then I come back a second time and just clean things up a little bit. So now let's look at this. Please enter your name. I am Mr. McWhorter. Okay. How old are you? I am 53. How tall are you? I am 5.9 feet tall. And now let's see. Hello, Mr. McWhorter. You are 53 years old and you are 5.9 feet tall. Ooh, because I said and here, that should not have been a period. That should have been a comma. So let's come here and say comma. So like I say, you do the best you can and then you look at it and you sort of tweak things to make it a little better. Ooh, it did not like that. Let's try it again. Again, I've got this long USB cable so that my thing will reach over here, and I think it might have taken it that time. Let's see. I am Mr. McWhorter. I am 53 years old. I am 5.9 feet tall. Okay. Hello, Mr. McWhorter. You are 53 years old, comma, and you are 5.9 feet tall. Okay. And how? Let's say that it was Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith. Okay. Mrs. Smith is going to be 32 years old. How tall is Mrs. Smith? She's 5.2 feet. Hello, Mrs. Smith. You are 32 years old and you are 5.2 feet tall. Okay, very good. So what you can see that we've done here is that we have read the types of data that we need from the serial port. We can read ints, we can read floats, and we can read strings. And with that, we can do just about anything that we would ever want to do. Okay. Now, what you see is that I just almost wrote this program for you, or I did write this program for you. I hope you at least went through and typed it in. Okay, I hope that you typed it in and got it working. But you need to be able to do something completely by yourself. And so I'm going to start giving you more programming now that you've got to do on your own. If you follow along with me on this program, you should be able to do the assignment. But here's the assignment that's due tomorrow. And what that is that I want you to input a user for their name, and then input from the user their weight in pounds. So you sort of say, like, what is your name? You read that in, and then how much do you weigh? You read that in. Okay. Now on this one, I'm going to recommend that on the weight you go ahead and make it a float, because maybe the person weighs, maybe the person weighs 112.5 pounds. Or maybe like if they were talking about a baby, usually you make babies like, 8.5 pounds. Since they don't weigh very much, you go ahead and give it in the decimal decimal number. So input for the person's name, then prompt them for their weight. So you're going to ask them what their name is, and you're going to ask them how much they weigh. You input those two things. Then what I want you to do is I want you to calculate their weight in ounces. So you ask them for their weight in pounds. I want you to calculate their weight in ounces. And then I want you to calculate their weight in grams. And then I want you to calculate their weight in carats. That's C-A-R-E-T, like a diamond. Like a diamond is 1 carat. That's a weight. Not a carat, not a C-A-R-R-O-T like you eat, but a carat like a diamond or a gemstone, C-A-R-A-T. So calculate the person's weight in carats, and then give them their weights back to them in nicely formatted output. And so let me show you what it should look like. Okay. Please enter your name. I am Mr. McWhorter. Okay. How much do you weigh in pounds? I weigh 190 pounds. Okay. And then it should come back and say, hello, Mr. McWhorter. You weigh 190 pounds. You weigh 3,040 ounces. You weigh 86,182.49 grams, and you weigh 430,912.75 carats. Okay, this is what it should look like. And then you can put your name and your weight in there, but you can test it with my number to make sure that you've done the conversions. Now, I'm not going to tell you the conversion factors. You're going to have to go in and do a little research on the internet to figure out how to do those conversions. But when you figure out how to do those conversions, then you can program them into your Arduino. And I will come around for a grade tomorrow, and I will be looking for nicely formatted text where you have white spaces where you need white spaces, and you have spaces along the line where you need spaces along the line, and that is what I will grade you on tomorrow. Thank you very much, guys. This has been Paul McWhorter at toptechboy.com, and tomorrow we will hopefully see you again for lesson number 13. Thanks a lot.